On today's show, the manager and benefactor of the trust fund, Jared Silberkleit.
That's right. This is trust fund benefactor Jared Silberkleit. And today, the Mike Rand Show is officially trust fund approved.
On today's show from Northeast Wrestling, he's the manager and benefactor of the trust fund, Jared Silberkleit. Hey, Jared, how are you?
I am doing great, especially considering you did pronounce my name correctly, which I can't say that for people who've interviewed me, people who've come up to me at shows, even ring announcers half the time. So pat yourself out on the back. You got a couple points right out of the gate.
So trust fund approved, right?
So far.
Okay, good.
We'll see how you finish.
So the first thing I want to ask you is, how did you get started in wrestling and become a manager?
Well, I've told this story a few times, and I kind of took a very unconventional path. I started in wrestling as a ring announcer when I was about 16 or 17 years old. There was a promotion that used to run the NEW Arena in Bethany before Northeast Wrestling made it its home. There was another promotion, and just so happened that place was down the road from my high school. I had friends who knew some of the wrestlers on the card, got in touch with the promoter. I started doing ring announcing for a few years, hung around, ended up doing commentary, interviewing, backstage, everything you could think of, until mid 2017. All of a sudden, the opportunity came about to manage on a Northeast Wrestling show. A guy who was supposed to be managing Wrecking Ball Legursky that night ended up getting injured, and the spot opened up. So it was kind of like, hey, sink or swim. Let's see if he can pull this off. And it was pretty much a hit right out of the gate. Ended up doing back-to-back events that weekend in Waterbury and over in Rockland, New York. And ever since then, it's just kind of been off to the races. So I guess I just reached my 4-year mark earlier this summer, and we've been going strong ever since.
Awesome. Congrats. So did you have any experience or background in doing that before you got started in this? Or did you do any studying and like interviewing or anything?
Well, I wanted to get into sportscasting. That was the dream for a while, being a sports announcer. I remember doing like PA for Little League when I was in high school. And then when I went to college to study journalism, so I kept up doing wrestling on the side. I didn't think I was really going to pursue wrestling full time when I was in that role. I just thought it was something fun to do on the weekends. I thought it was cool because I was a fan of wrestling. And I thought it was good public speaking experience. I definitely wanted to get as much like announcing experience as I possibly could. I was a sports writer for a couple of years out of college as well. So that was kind of that sportscasting path was something that I was interested in going, a route I was interested in taking. And then all of a sudden, once the managing opportunity came about, my focus totally shifted because I was just having such a blast cutting promos and playing a character and being able to be more larger than life as compared to just being the straight man. So it's definitely it's something that I'm really glad I was able to find as far as that opportunity goes, because I felt so much more at home in that role, and it's been so much more fun for me.
And you mentioned that you watched wrestling growing up. Who were your favorite wrestlers growing up?
It's funny when people ask this because like my character's always been like so like cartoonish, flamboyant, over the top. Some people might be surprised to find out that I actually was more drawn to the in-ring technical wrestling initially, because I didn't even become a wrestling fan until I was in high school, like 13, 14 years old was when I started watching. And I was drawn to guys like Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels. Before he signed with WWE, Daniel Bryan, watching his old stuff on the indies was absolutely, in Japan, was blowing my mind. I was really into Japanese wrestling for a little bit. And yeah, I was just like soaking up these like marathon matches, and that's what initially like kind of drew me in. But I also, had a real thing for the promos. So like when I went back to, because I had to play the catch up game, right? Because I started watching wrestling so late, I had to kind of go back in retrospect to catch up on the Attitude Era, and I was obviously like a big Stone Cold and Rock guy, just like anybody, probably more partial to Stone Cold. But yeah, I mean, I kind of like the blend of everything. But if I had to say one favorite, was probably Shawn Michaels because I thought he was the total package.
Yep, and it's funny too because just like I watched wrestling growing up, and then I stopped for a period of time, and then started back up around 2010 again. So I missed that whole Attitude Era, all that stuff. Like I did not.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I started 2000
Wow.
on, and then I want to say I originally started like around 1985 to 1990, and then I stopped for a while again, watched it a little again, and so I missed a big chunk of stuff. And now the past, how many years, the past decade I've been watching, so I missed some stuff there. But
Sure.
with the current stuff out now with AEW, WWE, all these new organizations popping up, who are some of the people that you really think are great on the wrestling scene and who you think we should all be looking out for?
Well, I mean, I think that as of late, really always been a huge fan of Kenny Omega's work, and I'm just really happy to see him just kicking ass at the top of AEW, because he was a guy who, like, I wondered, for years ago, like, why this guy wasn't on the top of a major wrestling organization that was national, because his stuff was like blowing my mind when I first saw him back when I first started watching. And I think he's like, just doing great. I think Kota Ibushi is a guy that I've also always been like a huge fan of, watching over in Japan. I thought that he was like one of the most mind blowing athletes I'd ever seen in my life. So to see him reach the top of the card in New Japan, that was pretty cool for me as well. There's a lot of guys I'm a fan of. Matt Riddle, the legitimate credentials as far as his background in the UFC, but I just love the character. I think that it's so refreshing. I think that it really stands out. And he owns it, and he just like will pull off these one-liners and backstage segments that will really, get me to jump out of my chair. And I like the team with him and Orton. Seeing him and AJ Styles mixed up at SummerSlam, it's like I could see those guys wrestle forever. So yeah, those would probably be a few of my favorites right now.
Then another one that I really like too is I think Baron Corbin does a great job. Whatever
Oh
they
my
give
gosh,
him, he's amazing.
The poor Corbin, and then he hits it big in Vegas. I mean, what a great freaking story that was, right?
Yep. And then
like when I saw the vignette of him, poor wandering the streets, I'm just like, I'm here for all of this.
Yep. And then the women, I mean, Sasha Banks, I love her. I think she's great. Bianca Belair, like all the women, they're really stepping up, doing a great job as well. So a lot of good talent out there right now.
Oh yeah.
So back to you. So as a manager, did you still have to learn how to wrestle and get in the ring, even though you're a manager?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, make no mistake about it. Anybody that you see performing on a professional wrestling show is trained. We still have to go to wrestling school. There's a lot of stuff that I had to learn that I thought, getting into managing, I was like, well, I mean, I'm not a wrestler. This can't be that challenging, right? And boy, was I wrong. Just from the first time you get out there, just knowing how to kind of move around ringside and like, positioning and timing. I mean, that's something that whether you're a wrestler or a non-wrestler, you have to be aware of that and be in sync with everybody and everything that's going on. And that comes from training, that comes from repetition. So yeah, I mean, I went to classes. I had to, obviously learn how to bump and, how to roll, how to, give moves, take moves, give punches, take punches, all that stuff. So yeah, I've had a handful of matches, just a couple, but I hope to do more in the future. I actually really kind of want to make that a thing where I'm available to do those novelty matches here and there when it makes sense storyline wise. Don't want to, I don't want to go down the route of being a full-time wrestler, I think, but I definitely want to kind of break that manager stereotype of being like, I think that people think that there is definitely a negative stereotype of managers. And that's something that I've had to kind of combat over the years, which is people think that, manager is a glorified fan, essentially. That you don't need the skill set of a wrestler, and you don't even need to really be in shape or anything like that. And I like to think that I can kind of break that curve, break that streak, and be a manager that's a little bit better on my feet and more physically able to do certain things that other guys can't do.
How is your character created?
Well, originally the trust fund was just the explanation for why I was managing, because I started managing for Northeast Wrestling after I had already been announcing and doing commentary and stuff. So we had to kind of explain to the fans, well, like, why is he suddenly, managing wrestlers? The explanation being that my dad's trust fund kicked in and now I could buy all these people. But I played it pretty straight at first. If you look back and you watch me in 2017, I'm not wearing the flashier suits. The voice wasn't quite as high pitched. I kind of played it a little bit. I didn't even have entrance music, actually. They would just kind of announce me to the ring, usually wrong, and I would just come out throwing a fit with no music. And it kind of started off as like, I always had a knack for getting under people's skin in real life. And that's what I was told to do at first. Like, hey, just be that button pusher and just go out and be you. Don't like kind of get in your head of thinking I have to suddenly become this like character overnight. It came organically. Over time, I started adding more and more wrinkles. And the more I thought about it, thinking how much I, was actually infatuated with money in real life, and just like really dialed into my own finances and watching like Dave Ramsey videos and the other guys on his team really helped, some verbiage become indoctrinated in my brain. But then like kind of thinking like, how can I crank that up to 11 and to become this larger than life wrestling character? It was definitely something that I've added things to over time, and just wanting to become more flashier with the outfits, more outspoken, and just more like louder, both like physically and verbally with the presentation. So I'm glad that it turned out the way it did, because I think that if I had tried to just become this, this over the top rich guy right off the rip, I think it would have come off as phony. And I don't think it would have stuck the way it did. And I think that the way it's built kind of over the last 4 years is something that I'm pretty happy and comfortable with.
Who are some of the people that you represent and manage?
Right now in wrestling, the trust fund in Northeast Wrestling, most prominently, is Mike Verna, Channing Thomas, and the Amazing Graysons, JP and Tommy. I'm also working with the Graysons for standalone wrestling in October. And then there's, in other promotions, like there's Test of Strength. I've worked with Steve Pena over there pretty recently. And I'm going to be at their event on September the 4th, returning there to Torrington. Then there's over in Invictus Pro Wrestling. I was recently unveiled as the leader of this new group called Sin, which is basically based around the 7 deadly sins. So I was kind of incognito under a mask for a little bit, and now I'm going to be with these guys. My primary focus right now is definitely with the current trust fund collective over in NEW. Having come off that like huge weekend in August. With Mike Verna against Eddie Kingston, and then managing Channing and the Graysons against the Hardy family office. So we've been pretty busy lately.
And you love to get the crowd riled up and, argue with the crowd a little bit and interact with the crowd. And sometimes you happen to rip a sign or two.
Oh, yeah.
And that actually inspired a podcast. So can you tell us about how your sign ripping started?
Oh, it was just too easy. I mean, Joe Gramont and his guys. I actually did that podcast a few weeks ago. And when they're just holding these anti-trust fund propaganda signs right in front of my face, it's so tempting. It's too tempting not to just snatch it and rip it to shreds. And usually I happen to have some help. If you go back and watch some footage on some of these shows, usually some of my trust fund assets are willing to grab a sign or two to assist the shredding, because usually there's more than one.
And do you have a rival or somebody, who you're usually up against that the trust fund hates?
Oh yeah, we. I would say that my biggest rival in wrestling over the last few years has been Wrecking Ball Legursky, and obviously we got a lot of history together. So Wrecking Ball was the first person that I ever managed. He's how the trust fund started back in mid 2017, and he was only about a year into Northeast Wrestling and really just kind of starting to take the next step in his career. And the two of us, I mean, we really we really helped each other out. And collectively, I mean, he was undefeated for a year with me managing him and ultimately won the NEW Heavyweight Championship. But then, when just after we hit the top of the mountain and he lost the title, he turned on me. And I basically have been on and off at war with him. It was pretty consistent for about close to a year that followed the split, which culminated in a tag team tables match where I managed the trust fund at the time was Thrill Ride and Ron Zombie against Wrecking Ball and Bully Ray in Danbury. This was in Danbury. It was, I think you were telling me your first event was the Darby Allin, John Moxley show in Waterbury. This was a couple months before that. And it sadly ended with me getting splashed through a table by Wrecking Ball. And ever since then, the rivalry has kind of been renewed in various places. I have across various promotions as well. I have been trying to find, guy after guy to try to beat Wrecking Ball, whether it's in Rhode Island, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut. I kind of joke at times like that we're like the Batman and Joker of the Indies.
Who would you like to manage that you haven't had a chance to manage yet?
I would say for some guys on the independents right now that I think would fit the trust fund brand pretty well. There's Alec Price and Charles Mason. Those are two guys who I think have a similar affinity for the dollars, just like yours truly. So that definitely comes to mind. And then, I mean, hey, my wallet's open to just about anybody these days. So there's certainly some guys, particularly on the AEW roster, that I mean, think about it. If Big Money Matt Hardy and Jared Silberkleit were to, I don't know. I mean, do we pool our money together or do we have another money fight? That's the question. Good friends, better enemies. I think there's a lot of potential.
And do you have a favorite match that you've been involved in?
Favorite match I've been involved in. There have been a few. I would actually say recently, speaking of Matt Hardy, one of them absolutely has to be the Trust Fund versus the Hardy Family Office at Six Flags Great Adventure, which just happened this past August. And Trust Fund there was Channing Thomas and the Graysons versus Matt Hardy, Mark Quinn, and Isaiah Cassidy, Private Party. And we were in the main event. It was one of the biggest crowds that Northeast Wrestling has had over the last several years, and certainly the biggest crowd since we have resumed events following the brunt of the COVID pandemic. So there's really it's an indescribable feeling to be out there in front of about 3,000 people at Six Flags in the main event, with Matt Hardy and the Private Party out there. I mean, it was like the energy was crazy. The people were so loud that you couldn't hear yourself think. And yeah, it really, I don't often get as many goosebumps as I used to, but that was kind of one of those moments where I'm at ringside and I was like, wow, this is really happening, huh? And then at the end, unfortunately, it ended pretty badly for me with me, taking a twist of fate from Matt, a swanton from Isaiah, and a shooting star press from Mark Quinn all in a row. So I left hurting, but the people were going ballistic. So up and all together, it was definitely a night I'll never forget.
What would you say you've learned most from working in the wrestling industry and working with all these different promotions?
What I've learned most, I would say communication. Communication is key, whether it's before, during, after an event. All aspects of wrestling, I think, can just be boiled down to communication and relationship building, because you're, in preparation, you've got to talk about, what's going on, what you want to do. and the best way to do it. And then even while you're out there, being able to communicate at ringside and that really helps your ability to adjust on the fly and listening to each other and cooperating. I mean, that has to be, I think, the most essential component to making any match or segment work, is making sure the guys are on the same page and talking to each other, read it, and not just verbally, but body language as well. And then it's just, outside the confines, the context of a wrestling event, I think just relationship building and knowing, who your go-to guys are in wrestling, because none of us can do this thing alone. We all have to have those guys to to be there for one another, and also, give us the tough love when it's needed, and just kind of, be there through the ups and downs, because this is, it's not an easy industry to be a part of. It's something, it really requires a lot of not just physical skill and toughness, but mental toughness as well, because that can sometimes be the most strenuous aspect at times. So I really think that having your go-to people, knowing who's in your circle, it's so important. So I would say communication above all is the biggest takeaway that I've gotten from professional wrestling.
What would you say are 3 fun facts about yourself that maybe everybody might not know?
3 fun facts. One of them being that I'm secretly a metalhead. A lot of people are surprised when they see the clean cut presentation. I think, first of all, you hear my entrance music, you think that the Killers are my favorite band, and that's not the case. And Metallica is my favorite, and I've been to countless metal shows from guys like them, and Kiss and Def Leppard, all up until bands of today, like. I've been to a couple death metal shows like Suicide Silence and stuff like that, and like Mayhem Festival when I was in high school. So that's probably one surprising fact. Sports nut is another one. Completely obsessed with baseball and football. They absolutely run my world. When I'm not involved in wrestling, I am usually consuming sports content in some capacity. This is actually kind of tough, because usually it's the other way around. When I'm telling people outside wrestling the fun facts, the wrestling thing is what throws people off. So I have to kind of work backwards here. And I would say, if I had to pick number 3, probably my infatuation with cooking. Real big foodie. And I like to consider myself a master of making the perfect steak sous vide, which a lot of people don't even know what that method is or how to pull it off. And it's something that I've dedicated myself to studying over the last few years with the help of some very good friends. So there's 3 fun facts right there. I'm sure I could probably think of something more outside the box, but like I said, usually wrestling is you do this.
Okay, and what is next for Jared and the Trust Fund? What is in store that we can look forward to?
Well, as of recording, I understand that this is going to air at a later date, but we have a lot of fun coming up to be had in Northeast Wrestling. As of recording, we've got our first event in Bethany, Connecticut in a year and a half, since right before COVID started. The NEW homecoming event in Bethany, and then we've got Danbury on October the 2nd. We have Return to Bethany after that on October the 16th, which I think will still be in the future by the time this goes up. Danbury might have already happened, if your schedule is to be believed. And then we've got, I know we've got more events in Connecticut on tap in November 13th in Waterbury, the 20th in Bethany once again. Standalone wrestling October 9th. I've got the Graysons going up against the Rep for the standalone tag titles. And we're just trying to take over the world, man. I mean, I really think in particular that weekend with NEW at WrestleFest 25 in Poughkeepsie, New York, working with Mike Verna against Eddie Kingston, and then Six Flags Great Adventure, HFO versus the Trust Fund. I mean, it really lit a fire under me. I am completely motivated to take my guys to the absolute top of this industry, and we're coming for every single opportunity we can find, with the ultimate goal being television. So, yeah, I mean, my attitude right now is let's blow this thing up. Something's working, and some people like it, some people really hate it, and those people are usually the loudest and the most fun to play with. So let's see. Sky's the limit. That's what I say.
Okay, and now it's time to play the lightning round, where I'm going to ask you two things, and you tell me which one you prefer.
Oh, okay.
So the first one, AEW or WWE?
Pass.
CDs or records?
CDs. Too young for
Gummy
records.
bears or Swedish fish?
Gummy bears. I don't like the Swedish fish texture.
Now I'm going to make you choose between baseball and football.
I gotta go football.
South Park, who's the better character, Butters or Kenny?
Butters. Maybe that should be the fun fact. I am a massive South Park fan. I don't even know if you knew that. Maybe you did. You're not. Oh, you did. Okay.
No, I love South Park.
There you go. Fun fact number 4. South Park was my favorite show as a kid.
Blink 182 or Always Grounded?
Blank. RJ wishes.
Corn dog, chili dog, or hot dog?
I thought we were only picking from 2 here.
Yeah, this one we did 3.
I'm gonna say corn dog, but I really don't like any of these.
Okay.
Because one's got a cornbread on it, so that makes it a little bit better.
Yep. Superstore or The Office?
Superstore? Is that a show?
Yeah.
Oh,
that's a retail sitcom on NBC.
Oh, gotcha. I've never heard of it, never seen it, but I love The Office.
Okay.
Office is my favorite grown-up show.
Okay. Vintage or modern?
Let's go vintage. Let's be fun.
Home delivery or in a restaurant?
In a restaurant. Get off your butt, get in the car, go have a nice meal, and not something that's soggy.
Yep. King of Queens or Everybody Loves Raymond?
Raymond, but neither of those are really my cup of tea.
Which would you rather have, a high IQ or a photographic memory?
High IQ. I remember the things that are important.
Okay, so that's it with the lightning round. So now, why don't you tell everybody how they can contact you and where can they see you in action? What are the websites that they can see you and the trust fund?
All right, you got to follow me on social media, twitter.com/Jared Talks Loud. What am I talking about? Handles here. Yeah, at Jared Talks Loud. Same with Instagram, same handle. Facebook.com/Jared Talks Loud. And visit my Pro Wrestling Tees store, prowrestlingtees.com/Jared Silberkleit Trust Fund. Maybe one of these days I'll make that URL shorter. But also follow northeastwrestling.com for updates on all our upcoming events, and be sure to follow them on social media at NEW Wrestling 1 on Twitter, Northeast Wrestling on Instagram, like the Northeast Wrestling Facebook page. And stay tuned because you never know where I'm going to show up. Whether it's there's plenty of other promotions I've been working with in the New England and tri-state area lately, such as Invictus Pro Wrestling, Standalone Wrestling, XWA, New World Wrestling Extreme, Test of Strength, and you never know where I'm going to pop up next. So definitely follow me on Twitter, and we'll see what the rest of 2021 holds and see what happens as we charge ahead into 2022.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us here today. And thank you guys for watching, and we'll talk to you all soon. Bye, everybody.